What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and joined by my co-host, finally, once again, Alex Wilson has made his return to the Fireside Giants channel. Everybody put a big W in the chat if you're excited for Alex being back. Alex, well, let's waste no more time. Let's hear from you. How are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling after the Giants wrapped up week 2 of OTAs?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And yeah, guys, it's been a minute. My Wi-Fi finally, seemingly, hopefully a little bit better than it previously has been. And yeah, a lot of kind of news coming out about this Giants team. And I'm excited. This is a better football team than we've seen in recent seasons on paper. I got to see it to believe it as a Giants fan these days. But I'll tell you what, the Giants have some real talent here. Russell Wilson is much better, obviously, than Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, anything we've had over the past couple of years. And when you actually look at just the offense in general, Malik Neighbors, obviously Darius Slayton, a lot of the pieces on this offense have not been maximized. And the reason for that is they drafted a couple guys, aka Jalin Hyatt, we're going to talk about early in this episode. They drafted him to be a straight line burner, downfield kind of threat, and they didn't have an offense. They didn't have a quarterback to make the throws. They didn't have an offensive line to protect the quarterback. So we're hoping that we can see a little bit more consistency in those categories. But Anthony, appreciate you welcoming me back with open arms. It's been a minute, but what are you thinking right now with Russell Wilson hosting what they call secret workout with Jalin Hyatt, getting him some private workouts beforehand, and how you think that's going to translate to the regular season?
Well, so far it seems like it's translated to OTAs, which is a good sign. Jalin Hyatt has performed really well during OTAs. Listen, it is only OTAs, and we always have to preface the conversation with that and remind everybody that OTAs are non-padded practices. So they're pretty much just running routes against one another. There's no contact. There's no physicality to this. And so that's really going to be my thing with Jalin Hyatt is until I get to see him with the pads on and get to see him play with some physicality, I can't really buy into the hype. It's exciting to talk about him playing well at OTAs. It's exciting that, Russell Wilson is instilling so much confidence in him. But even thinking back, Alex, if you remember last year during the preseason, let's walk back to that game against the Houston Texans. Remember when Daniel Jones threw that interception on a go ball to Jalin Hyatt? And yeah, I know Daniel Jones threw an interception, and what's new? But he threw that ball, and it was maybe a little bit underthrown. But honestly, we both thought that Jalin Hyatt was just as much responsible for that interception as Daniel Jones was. And essentially breaking that down, Jalin Hyatt was running a go route against Derek Stingley, a very good cornerback, but he got no separation, ran it straight up the sideline, didn't work his way back over the top to stack the cornerback, and had zero physicality at the catch point. He pretty much gave Derek Stingley the interception. He had no effort in preventing that ball from being picked off. So while it wasn't the best throw from Daniel Jones, it also wasn't the worst throw, and it really shouldn't have been an interception. It was a really lazy route from Hyatt and a real lack of physicality within the route that led to it being an interception rather than a pass breakup. So until we see Jalin Hyatt with the pads, we see him have an opportunity to be physical with some of these cornerbacks, I can't buy in. That's just how I feel. I'm excited. Russell Wilson says he really believes in Jalin Hyatt. I believe in Russell Wilson, so by association, I have to have some level of belief in Jalin Hyatt. But generally speaking, until we at least even see him on the practice field with pads, but when we get to the preseason, I think we'll start to get a good answer on Jalin Hyatt. I got to see him with the pads on, going up against some legit competition, because physicality has been his biggest weakness. And until he proves that he can fix that aspect of his game, I can't have full confidence in him actually making an impact this upcoming season.
I think that's an incredibly valid point. And the reason that there's kind of two sides to the story with Jalin Hyatt. There's the side of they didn't give him a reason to be confident, and the side of he didn't really give us a reason to be confident. So it's kind of a two-way street here. And as you mentioned, his routes were lackadaisical. He was not running like a refined receiver in the NFL in his second season. He was not taking big developmental steps forward. He was not helping in the passing game. He was not offering any value as a short yardage receiver. His only use case is the deep ball at this point in time until he proves otherwise. He is a straight line, just go route receiver. That's basically all he is going to be used for until he can prove he can run the dig, he can run different route concepts and make things happen after the catch. Otherwise, he is a one-trick pony, right? We need to see what actually he can do before we gain any confidence. But I will say this, Russell Wilson, this is one of the best deep ball passers in the history of the league. This is one of the best deep ball passers last season. I think he had a 40% completion rate, throwing 20 plus yards downfield. for context. Maybe it was higher than that, like 45%.
4%.
What was it?
I think it was 54%.
Yeah, so 54%. I think Daniel Jones was 24%, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So you're looking at just a different realm of quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball downfield. And if the offensive line can even stay competent, you're going to see Slayton, Neighbors, even little Wan'Dale Robinson and Hyatt maximize their talent in different capacities, different areas of the football field. So, Hyatt, like he wasn't given a reason to be confident, but he doesn't have the skill set to really expand his game just yet. But I'm not going to limit him. I do think that there is a lot of untapped potential there, and we finally have a quarterback that might be able to at least just chip away at it a bit.
Agreed. Totally agree on all points. Untapped potential, the speed, combine that with Russell Wilson's deep passing ability. This could be the breakout season for Hyatt. Agreed. However, what's standing in Jalin Hyatt's way? The depth chart. Darius Slayton, $12 million per season. And Darius Slayton, throughout the entirety of his NFL career, Alex, what's been his biggest strength? His deep receiving ability. And it hasn't been maximized. So we're talking about Hyatt as a potential breakout candidate. Honestly, I think the conversation needs to shift to Darius Slayton being a breakout candidate. This late in his career, it's kind of hard to call that a breakout. He's pretty established. He makes $12 million per season. But we're talking about a guy who is the consummate professional. He shows up and he shows out every single season. He plays through injuries. He's put up 750 yards several seasons in his career with a really bad quarterback play. And so we're talking about how good quarterback play from Russell Wilson is going to elevate all of these guys. We can't leave Darius Slayton out of this conversation, especially when you're looking at the skill set overlap between Slayton and Jalin Hyatt. Remember, Alex, when the Giants drafted Jalin Hyatt, what did we say that we hoped for him? That he would take over Darius Slayton's job, that he would, because the skill set was similar, that he could be a more explosive version of Darius Slayton, and then the Giants wouldn't have to pay Darius Slayton. Well, the Giants had to pay Darius Slayton because it didn't happen that way for Jalin Hyatt. So now we're looking at all these guys in this offense. I think that Darius Slayton could really break out with Russell Wilson throwing him the football, actually going deep. Think back to that 2023 season, how during that final stretch of games when Tyrod Taylor was out on the field, Darius Slayton all of a sudden turned into like prime Deshaun Jackson. I mean, he had that deep touchdown against the Eagles. He had that deep touchdown against the Rams. I mean, he was running behind everybody, every defense, and he was putting up like 100 yards like it was nothing. So Darius Slayton is the guy that I think is going to be the bigger beneficiary. It's great for Hyatt. He's boosting his confidence. He's got a quarterback that believes in him and that can actually maximize the skill set. That's fantastic. But again, all of those same things, because of the skill set overlap, can be said about Darius Slayton. And I think that he is the guy who's realistically going to pop off in a much bigger fashion this season as a result of Russell Wilson's presence on this roster.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And Jalin Hyatt, what is he really playing for right now? There's two things. He's playing for someone to get hurt, right? And he's the next guy up. He's the next man up. And he's playing for opportunities for if Malik Neighbors is, in the slot, for example, they can put Hyatt and Slayton on the outside. Like they can do some different things, get these guys involved in different ways. But right now it's Darius Slayton and Malik Neighbors are your boundary guys. Like those are the guys you're going to be leaning on the outside. And Slayton, listen, for all of his flaws, his limited, and he doesn't even have the worst route tree. He can run a lot of the important routes you want, but for his lack of hands at times, he does drop the ball. I will say this, and I'll quote Wan'Dale Robinson from yesterday's practice. Russell Wilson throws a damn good ball. He throws a very catchable ball. That is a huge difference. Darius Slayton does not catch fastballs well. Never has. He never caught Daniel Jones well. And it's littered throughout his first 5-6 years of his career. Like he literally dropped so many fastballs because they were just nosediving half the time, or they were out of reach. I think Russell Wilson throws a very catchable pillow-like ball, like Tempur-Pedic-like ball. And I do think that, if you're looking at just from a receiver's perspective, like a guy like Slayton who has catching problems sometimes, it is going to be his best friend, right? He's going to be able to catch a lot of these balls. He's not going to be dropping as many, in my opinion. Got to see it to believe it. But I do think that Russell Wilson is head and shoulders better. I do think he throws a better deep ball. I think he throws much more catchable short passes as well. And even Neighbors had drop problems last year, guys. I mean, look, the sample was so large that like the percentage is so low, but like I think that a lot of the balls that these guys dropped will be caught with Russell Wilson throwing the football. I think that's not that far-fetched of a take.
It's not far-fetched at all. I've said it, you haven't been on the channel with me in a while, but I've been saying this a lot, how the catchability of the passes is going to make a big difference. Just hitting receivers in stride, dropping it in there with touch. I mean, Alex, I feel like for 5 years on this channel, we've been talking about the lack of touch on Daniel Jones's passes, right? Especially on those deep balls. Everything was just a laser beam. It was like so difficult to catch. I mean, how many times did Evan Engram and Darius Slayton get open downfield, and had that ball just layered in there, would have been an easy catch and run. But instead, it just fires in, and then it bounces off their hands. We saw that all the time. And I think even last season, prime example, remember that game against Dallas? I think Neighbors had a drop in that one, and Wandale had a drop, but he had to make some sort of diving, ridiculous attempt at it. And same thing with Darius Slayton on like a comeback route. He had to dive to his toes and try and make like a somersault catch. And everybody was like, "Oh, Slayton, how did you drop that?" I'm like, would you have caught that? That's a pretty tough catch to me. And it was because of a bad throw from Daniel Jones. And I thought that happened all the time. So when I look at Darius Slayton's drop problems, or his drop numbers, in fact, if you look at his drops, Alex, on Pro Football Focus, and then if you look at them on Pro Football Reference, there's two different numbers. Why is that? One of those websites calculates those drops with the consideration that the quarterback made a bad throw. The other one doesn't. So take the lower number. That's probably more accurate, because a lot of those dropped passes from Slayton were just terribly thrown footballs. I'm going to die on that hill. Darius Slayton is a much better player than Giants fans give him credit for. They're far too critical of him. That's a great contract at $12 million per season. And Wan'Dale Robinson saying exactly what we have been saying really makes me feel validated. I mean, just hearing Wan'Dale say, "Oh, that thing drops in like a pillow on those short passes." Yeah, he has no idea what that's like, because he's only had freaking rocket arm Daniel Jones beaming 2-yard passes to his chin every single game of his career so far.
It's so freaking bad, dude. Like I the grin that Wan'Dale Robinson had on his face as he was talking about Russell Wilson's passes. My God, like dude was just smirking like the Grinch. I was like, you could tell like he was so happy that Russell Wilson was his quarterback. You could just tell. I mean, think about even Darius Slayton, who was like the biggest Daniel Jones shill I've ever seen. They're good friends, obviously, I understand. Even he was like excited, and he was like being very cryptic in his tweets ahead of Russell Wilson signing and he was like, "No Rodgers," right? He wanted Russell Wilson. Like you could already tell these receivers wanted Russ. You could already tell that like this was something that they had expected and wanted. And I think that that's like kind of hilarious that even washed Russell Wilson, like he is not the same player he was 5-6 years ago. Even like a much worse version of Russell Wilson is making our receivers giddy at the idea of how much better this offense is going to be. And like, just think about how down bad we've been, and we are just coming around to like realizing. I know we got to see Russell actually do anything first. Like that's most important, but at least he's proven, at least like we know he can do it. It's just like, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic just because we know that we have some proven talent on this team, and we have a leader, a guy that can organize the offense, organize the offensive line, like call out protections. Like there's so many cadences that go into being a quarterback that like Russ is going to like just elevate and enhance significantly.
Yeah, I want to add a layer to this. It's kind of something that you just hinted at there. Not only did Wan'Dale Robinson praise Russell Wilson's catchability of his passes, but he also highlighted it's really important having an experienced quarterback that tells you where to go and knows the timing of these routes and all of those different things. That's also something that Wan'Dale highlighted. And I'll bring up my favorite analogy / example that I say all the time, Alex. There's a big difference between catching the ball 2 yards from the line of scrimmage in stride and turning upfield for a 6-yard gain versus that ball being late, and now you're tackled 2 yards from the line of scrimmage. That's a difference between 3rd and 4 and 3rd and 8, and that completely changes your entire playbook on such a play call. So that's something that Wan'Dale also mentioned. Again, I've been saying that all offseason long. That's going to be the biggest difference for this Giants offense is the ball coming out on time and accurately so that there's yards after the catch opportunities, because those opportunities haven't been there. It's been a lot of catch short, get immediately tackled because the ball was not in stride and it wasn't on time. Wan'Dale Robinson in particular had a lot of moments last season where he was catching the ball very close to the line of scrimmage, but just could not turn upfield because the ball wasn't on time. Now that ball should be on time, and that's going to create a lot of different looks for the Giants in third and short opportunities, whereas they were playing third and longs in the past. So that's really, really important. Alex, one last detail that I want to get at on Jalin Hyatt. So we talked about Jalin Hyatt. I mentioned this earlier. When the Giants drafted him, the hope was that he would become the successor to Darius Slayton. Well, that didn't happen. Darius Slayton is back, and he's on a 3-year contract. However, let me pose my idea for Jalin Hyatt and how he really could turn his career around. It's not going to be by playing WR2 and playing on the outside and trying to replicate what Darius Slayton does. Instead, I think, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Alex, Jalin Hyatt should convert to the slot. Wan'Dale Robinson is the one in the final year of his contract. That's the player that he could realistically succeed in this offense. If Wan'Dale goes off to get paid from another team next offseason, that opens up the slot receiver position. Meanwhile, the Giants' outside receiver position will still be held down by, of course, Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton. But the slot receiver position is the greatest window of opportunity that Jalin Hyatt has. And let's add that on with the conversation we just had about his lack of physicality. You know where you can get away with that? The slot. You can be a little bit less physical in the slot. Obviously, you got to be physical running routes across the middle and taking hits. That's a totally different kind of physicality. But in terms of beating press coverage, stacking receivers on go balls, those are things that you don't have to worry about as much from the slot receiver position. For me, if the Giants want to maximize Hyatt, and if Hyatt wants to make something of his career and find a place in this New York Giants lineup, it's going to be from the slot receiver position. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, Alex.
I mean, listen, the slot position with Wan'Dale is interesting because Wan'Dale Robinson, like I like Wan'Dale. I think he's a good player. He had 150 targets last year, some crazy number. And I think he didn't even crack like 700 yards. For a guy that had so many targets to not even crack 700 yards, you can tell the style of offense that he was being asked to run. He's a phenomenal route runner, and with his agility, like he's electric after the catch. I want to see the Giants expand on Wan'Dale Robinson's skill set because I don't think we've actually seen the best of him yet. I think that he actually can be a bit more effective downfield. If he has a good season, though, what kind of contract would you give him? If Wan'Dale had a good season,
I don't know, but I was asking you about Hyatt. I was trying to ask you. I think Hyatt should move to the slot.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is like, do you think that Hyatt has that lateral agility to be a slot receiver? He needs
to be a better route runner. He definitely needs to improve his route running. But just in terms of his weakness of not being physical enough and his speed being a strength, and Wan'Dale potentially not being on this roster next year. And I'll answer your question about Wan'Dale's contract in a second. But like you look at all of those things, is that not the most clear path for him to actually get on the football field and make an impact is from the slot?
I mean, it might be. See, the thing is like, he needs to be a better route runner for sure. He's not a security blanket because he's not a short yardage guy. Can he run those drags? He can run the drags. I have no problem with that because he's got the speed across the field. He can run. I don't necessarily trust him on slant so much or like, zigs or whatever, or any short concept route. He doesn't get there fast enough because he's kind of lanky and long. But I mean, I guess you could try it. You know what I mean? Like what's the harm of trying it? I guess there is none. Maybe that could be a solution. I like him as more of like a designed slot guy where like he's not running slot routes, but he's attacking the seams with his speed. Like you could use him in the slot, Slayton on the outside, and Neighbors inside, and you can create some sort of route concepts where he's able to attack the seams and gets matched up with like a linebacker or a safety. If they're playing man, or I guess if they're playing zone, you're probably trying to beat like a cover one, or you're trying to attack a space in coverage. And Russell Wilson can hit those spots though. Like that's the thing about Russ compared to Daniel Jones is like if you design a play where there's a window to throw, Russ is going to throw the ball there. Like he's going to at least be anticipatory and get the ball where it needs to go. Daniel Jones just wouldn't even know where to go. He wouldn't even know where to attack the zones and the spots on the field. So like, I think that Hyatt can be specifically used in the slot, but I don't think he could be labeled a slot receiver, if that makes sense.
I get what you're saying. And it's what kind of Greg is mentioning here with putting him in motion into the slot. And that's what they did a lot of at Tennessee. They found ways to one of the biggest knocks on Hyatt coming out was that he wasn't able to beat press coverage because he wasn't asked to in that Tennessee offense, because they would move him around in motion and put him in the slot a lot. The Giants haven't done that with him. They've just been like, yo, go line up outside and be a traditional number 2 receiver. Like, what are we doing? You know that's not his strength. You know that's his biggest weakness. It always frustrates me. The Giants just don't know how to use their players, is how it feels sometimes. But I truly believe that if you're going to get this guy on the field and you're going to get him to make an impact, it's going to be by moving him into the slot, even if that is by design and from motions, whatever, like you're mentioning and Greg is mentioning. Or if you're actually converting him to being a slot receiver, I think there are ways to do that. And I think that he can learn how to run routes better. I think there are a lot of different things that you can do to develop Jalin Hyatt. And unfortunately, the New York Giants just have not done any of those things to develop him. So that's my feeling on it. And circling back to your question about Wan'Dale Robinson, because that's the reason I'm bringing this up. The reason I'm bringing up should Hyatt move into the slot is because I think, to answer your question, Wan'Dale's going to make at least $10 million per season, isn't he? I mean, he's a pretty good player. And let me see his stats last year. He had 140 targets, 93 receptions, 699 yards. Yeah, 7.5 yards per reception is disgusting.
I don't think there's ever been a receiver in history that has caught 93 passes and hasn't cracked 700 yards. That's freaking crazy.
I bet you're right. I bet that's never happened before.
Like, that is absurd. 140 targets and not cracking 700 yards is like just malpractice from a receiver standpoint. You're just literally a battering ram at that point. Like, you're not actually doing anything. You have no use on offense, but you just catch short passes because you can't do anything else. Not that Wan'Dale can't, but the offense couldn't. Like, they had to get the ball out so fast, and there was nobody else. Like, they couldn't get the ball to Slayton because they couldn't wait for him to get open. So it was Neighbors catching ridiculous passes, or it was Wan'Dale being fed short concepts that just, I don't know, man. Like, that's just a kind of is the whole number. That's just like a good example of how bad our offense has been. I really, if he has a good season, I think he will be a lot more productive. I could see him cracking 700 yards on like 60 receptions this year. If that happens, 10 mil per season, I guess I could see it. I mean, contracts are so expensive these days. I'm not even going to like limit them anymore. I could see it.
I think that the comparison would be Khalil Shakir. How much did he make? He's making like $13 million per season. I don't think that there's I think so. I don't think there's a huge difference between Wan'Dale and Khalil Shakir. I mean, Shakir's probably
4 years, 53. So he's getting 13.25. Yeah. So he's getting about the same. I think Shakir's better than Wan'Dale, personally.
He's had one good season, though. Like, he had 76 receptions for 821 yards last year. He had 39 for 611 the year prior. His stats are pretty comparable to Wan'Dale. They're a little bit better, but they're pretty comparable.
How many receptions, though? Again,
76 for 821. Yeah, he's averaging 10.8 yards per reception. Meanwhile, Wan'Dale is averaging, because he averaged 7.5 yards per reception.
I mean, that's
his average depth of target, dude, was 4.8 yards.
What?
That's a tight end number.
It's a running back. That's like, he might as well be a freaking, like, might as well be a running back. I think Turd Holler said that. Like, it's just insanity. So, you know, with that being said, I do think that the Giants will get more from him this year. Maybe he'll get more like Khalil Shakir numbers this year. And if that's the case, I could see it being in the 10 to like 12 range.
And there's no way the Giants can pay him then, right?
I don't think so, man.
Are you really going to? I mean, you've got Malik Neighbors on the rookie contract, sure, but are you really going to be paying $12 million to Slayton and another $10 million to Wan'Dale? I'd rather take that $10 million, double it, and hand it off to the best free agent receiver on the market, right? Like, go pay someone.
I'm like curious who's available, because you could always find a slot receiver like in the draft, probably. But like,
I'm saying,
Wan'Dale's good. He's not. I mean, he plays a role. He's a role player. He's not like a game changer, you could say. But let's look 2026. Free agent wide receivers: Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, Debo, Cortland Sutton, Tutu Atwell.
Alec Pierce, right? Alec Pierce. That's my boy.
Pierce.
You place him on the outside opposite Neighbors.
Adam Thielen could be 45 years old, and I would still love him. He's just productive, just a productive fellow.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'll mention, you know, Neighbors has the ability to play from the slot quite a bit too. So
he does. I mean, look, if the Giants went out next year and like drafted a big time receiver, or you know, drafted or signed a big time receiver, they could get crazy. You know, they could have some real fun next year with that. Next year's wide receiver free agency is not like I mean, they're going to extend Terry McLaurin probably, right, in Washington. Mike
Oh, did you
Evans,
see that report recently?
I saw he like was holding out though. No, right? He's
Yeah.
kind
He
of
wants a
pissed.
contract. Otherwise, he wants to be on the move. So potentially, I guess he could be available
They
next
would trade him
offseason.
though. They would trade him before anything. Debo could be available because
Would
he's
they
making a
though?
lot.
Would they trade him?
They shouldn't. I mean, he was a monster. They
I
should
mean,
pay
they
him.
even if they don't pay him and he decides, yeah, I don't want to be here, they'll probably just let him play out the final year of his deal because they're in a window right now. So they'll
They
probably just
should, yeah,
let him walk rather than trade him.
yeah,
So
maybe.
I
I
don't know.
mean,
He could be available.
they could tag and trade him maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tough looking ahead to the future market just because you don't know who's going to get signed. But one thing that I will bring up here, do you know how much cap space the Giants have next offseason?
It's not a lot. It's like 13 mil, I think, right?
8.4 million now after
8.4 mil.
restructuring Brian Burns.
Yeah, so I'm not overly concerned about that because like they're gonna cut a bunch of players and
Yeah.
it's gonna boost that. And then plus like those cap hits are gonna be tiny. Like you can restructure Brian Burns another, I think, 8 million. You can still restructure more of Dexter Lawrence's deal, and you can still you're probably gonna cut a couple guys that I can't think off the top of my head like would save them a ton of money. But like you could just structure the contracts to kick in 2027. And like you're gonna have more money than God. Like you're gonna Jackson Dart on a rookie deal. Like you're gonna have so much cap space to work with. So like next year's cap situation doesn't really bother me because 2027 quarterback on a rookie contract, like it doesn't get better than that. You know what I mean? Like assuming Dart like hangs on and like can maintain his role as the starter.
Yeah, I mean, they have a bunch of guys. Like, let's say Okereke doesn't play well this year, they can free up 9 million by cutting him next offseason. Same thing for John Runyon, 9 million. Like, they have ways to free up money. Graham Gano is still on this roster. I can't imagine he's still on this roster next year. They would save 4.5 million then. James Hudson is probably going to get cut next year for 5.5 million. So, like, there's so many different things that they can do. So, I'm not worried about that. But I do want to bring it up because it is a constraint. Eight and a half million is not a lot, and they are going to have to reshuffle the roster to make some cap space. And so I bring this up because I want to tie this into a larger conversation about the 2022 NFL draft class for the New York Giants. So this is something that I've been thinking about, and I've been kind of mentioning in these episodes, but I've been waiting to have you back on the channel to really dive deep into this, Alex. The 2022 draft class, let's walk through all the selections that the Giants made, and I'm going to take a minute here, so pay attention, strap in, but you'll see where I'm going if you walk with me. 5th overall pick, Kayvon Thibodeau, hasn't reached his potential, hasn't lived up to the hype, but he's filled out his frame. He looks like a bigger, stronger version of himself at OTAs. Could he be turning a corner? Number 7 overall pick, the second first-round pick, Evan Neal, has now moved to left guard, took first-team reps at Thursday's practice. Could he be turning a corner with the position change? Second-round draft pick Wan'Dale Robinson has gotten better every single season and is looking like he might be primed to take a bigger step forward this year with Russell Wilson throwing the football. Going into the 3rd round, Cordell Flatt was sneaking in some CB2 reps during OTAs. He started to look a lot better down the stretch last season. Even Josh Azidu has gotten some praise for his performance at OTAs. And when you get into the 4th round pick, Dane Belton has been the standout of OTAs and has gotten better every single season. And I think Daniel Bellinger, was he part of that draft class as well? But we're going to leave him out of this conversation. Oh, the 5th round pick was Micah McFadden, who I think the Giants should go ahead and extend immediately. So this is the point I'm making. We've often criticized that draft class as being a poor draft class. We've said it wasn't good. There weren't a lot of hits in there, and Joe Shane didn't do a good job. But perhaps we were premature. I'm actually starting to feel like that draft class is developing. In 2022 and 23 and 24, were all those guys super impactful? No. But now they're all in contract years here in 2025, and they're all playing better and better every single season. They're all playing the best football of their lives. They've all gotten to a point now where any one of those players could probably compete for some sort of job in the starting lineup. So what's your take on that? Do you think we were perhaps too harsh on that draft class and maybe a little impatient? Because I'm starting to feel like we were a little bit impatient, because think about this. If Kayvon Thibodeau breaks out this year and has 12 sacks as a result of playing alongside Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns. I mean, we're going to look at this draft class completely differently than we did this time last year. If Evan Neal ends up starting games this season and playing decent football at guard, we're going to look at this draft class completely differently. If Micah McFadden, a 5th-round pick, gets an extension, if Dane Belton starts to play a role in this defense, if Cordell Flott starts to play a role in this defense, all in all, what I'm trying to say is that 2022 class, we've been very critical of it. Perhaps we were a little impatient. It seems like they've all gotten better every single year, and they are developing. And here we are 4 years later. They're all in contract years, and it's starting to look like it has the potential of being a pretty good draft class. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think in a perfect world, you're absolutely right. We see all these guys develop at the same exact time and hit their stride. But I think mostly we just, are listing a lot of ifs. If Kayvon Thibodeau can show that he can take that step forward and be consistent, I think he's the best of the bunch in terms of the upside. And he's been solid, just inconsistent on a bad team. Like there's other factors at play here, changing systems with Wink and then Shane Bowen. Evan Neal, I wouldn't even call him an if. I call him a prayer at this point. Changing positions, I really got to see it to believe it. Like he is the guy that I need to see him play well to believe that he can be a guard, because there is just too many questions with him right now. So I'm going to leave that one as probably like a 15% chance that he pans out or he comes back from the dead. And if he does, it'll be amazing, but I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to say 0. I'm going to say that 15%. Like you said, Wandale is a contributor. He's a good player. He's not great, but he's good. He serves a purpose. He can move the chains for you. He can do some stuff after the catch, and that's very useful in today's NFL. He has some use cases as a gadget piece every now and then. You mentioned Dane Belton. He's had a really good spring so far. Like he has 3 interceptions in OTAs. Shane Bowen's been, kind of saying some really good things about him. So I do think that when it comes to Dane Belton, I'm cautiously optimistic that if he is put into a position to play, and like you said, with Jalin Hyatt, the only thing standing in the way of Dane Belton is the depth chart. So Tyler Nubin, he's probably playing strong safety this year. Javon Holland at free safety. If one of those guys goes down, Belton's the next man up. So he's got to show his worth. And it's never a bad thing to have depth pieces, right? Micah McFadden, he's starting. We've gotten more value out of him than I think we bargained for, because he's a 5th-round pick. So I'll tell you what, they've gotten more value from their mid-round picks in that draft class in some cases than their first-round picks, because Kayvon's been good, not great, inconsistent, bordering on average and good. Last year was not that bad. And then Evan Neal has been a complete bust, right? So there are reasons to believe that some of those players will, I know we've been very critical, and really we're critical because of the 1st-round value, right? Kayvon Thibodeau is supposed to be like a superstar. That's what we thought we had when we drafted him. Evan Neal was supposed to be the star right tackle next to Andrew Thomas. That's what we thought when we drafted him. And that's what everyone thought he would be. And neither of those two things have come to fruition, right? Kayvon Thibodeau's good and Evan Neal's horrible. So it's there's a lot left. There's a lot of ceiling left. You know what I mean? They're not even close to that yet, but Evan Neal didn't pick up his 5th-year option. It's a one and done. He's got to prove it right now. Kayvon Thibodeau has 2 more years left. So Wandale, the rest of them, this is their last year of their contracts. And right now we're unsure if they're going to extend any of them. So right now, are they late bloomers? They need to be. It's not do we want them to be should they be? They need to be late bloomers. They need to be contributors on this team this year, because otherwise, it's going to be a stain on Joe Shane's early draft classes, early decision making. This most recent draft class on paper looks fantastic. Last year's draft class was fantastic. 2 great drafts can cover up a lot of bad situations, but the coaching staff needs to get their stuff together, because they've had so much turnover, such a lack of consistency. I think that the reason they kept Shane Bowen after all, Anthony, was for that consistency, was to provide that, because they didn't want to turn it over for the 3rd time in 3 years. You're setting yourself up for failure if you do that. I think that's why Shane Bowen's still here right now. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that draft class, is they have a lot to prove, and I need to see it to believe it.
Fair enough. I'm with you. They got to prove it. I'm not saying by any means or any of these guys extension candidates right now, other than I think Mike McFadden is. But no, I just think it's interesting, because we always talk about you don't know what a draft class is until 3 years out. And so after 3 years, we kind of wrote off that draft class. But entering this 4th year, it's kind of like, well, maybe we should have said you don't know what a draft class is until 4 years out, because all of them look like they've become pretty decent players now, at least good depth pieces. But at least we know Belton is a good depth piece, right? We know that Cordell Fly is a good depth piece. And that's more than you could say about a lot of Dave Gettleman's mid-round picks. Those guys weren't even depth pieces. They were off the team in like 3 years. So the fact that all these guys are contributing going into year 4, and some of them contributing in pretty large roles, I do think is a pretty solid positive to take away from OTAs. Again, however much you can take away from OTAs is open to interpretation. But yeah, I think that, there's definitely some optimism growing with me and that 2022 draft class. I think that some of these players really could perform well. And again, I brought that up because the Giants don't have a lot of cap space next year. They're going to have to make moves. But let's imagine a world where Wandale breaks out and Belton breaks out and McFadden breaks out and they didn't extend him. And then, now you've got some money to spend, and or you don't have much money to spend, but you have a lot of players, in-house talent that are going to be demanding some money. So it's definitely an underrated storyline, I think, that's starting to bubble up and that we'll keep an eye on throughout the regular season. How does that 2022 class perform with all of those players in contract years? So that's something I found interesting. One other thing that I found interesting, taking away from OTAs, Alex, I want to bring this up with you. Elijah Chapman, he's been playing some good ball according to the practice reports. He's had several sacks, some batted down passes, and some reps at fullback. You have any takes on Elijah Chapman being fullback 1 for the New York Giants?
I freaking love it. Just get big guy ball and make run. That's it, man. Give big guy ball, run. That is it. That is all I want. It works every single time. But Elijah Chapman, I mean, I saw that guy run, man. You saw that guy haul ass down the field. What was it, last preseason game of the year? Like, he hauled ass. And I think that Elijah Chapman, like, he's kind of, I love the guy, but like, he has got his back against the wall right now, because we added so much depth to that defensive front. Like, you got Roy Robertson Harris now, DJ Davidson's still there, Jordan Riley's still there, you got Raheem Nunez-Roche, Jeremiah Ledbetter. Like, Elijah Chapman's got to have the freaking summer of his life to make this team. Otherwise, he might end up on the practice squad where another team could sign him. So this team went from having one of the worst defensive interiors in the league, as outside of Dexter Lawrence, to one of the deepest with Darius Alexander now there as well. So, like, I'll tell you what, man, that has been the case for several positions on this team, right? In the interior defensive line went from one of the worst to one of the best. The edge rushers went from one of the worst to one of the best, with that adding Abdul Carter to the mix here. Cornerback went, and really just the secondary in general, I'm not going to say one of the best, but they went from one of the worst to at least average, right? With Javon Holland and Paulson and Debo here now. The quarterback room went from one of the worst to at least average. Like, I do think that this team got better at multiple critical positions, and that should result in wins. But then again, we have the hardest schedule of any team in the last 5 years. So, like, there's the Giants' luck for you. But yeah, Chapman, I love the guy. He's awesome. I love undrafted free agent storylines, but he's got to have a really big summer to make this team.
I agree with you, especially when you consider how undersized he is. He's only 278 pounds, I think, for an interior defender. I mean, that's severely undersized for that position, but it's not undersized for the fullback position. It's a bit oversized. Perhaps he's got a lane to make the roster through a different position. I do think that's interesting. Somebody in the chat last week asked me that question and was wondering, could Chapman play a different position like linebacker? And I was like, you know what? That's not a terrible idea. He's kind of built like an off-ball linebacker, but the Giants are finding a way to get him on the field at fullback, which I think is equally interesting. And you put it best, and I won't even try and repeat that. It was a golden line that you put out there with the big guy get ball run. That was fantastic. So I guess we'll keep an eye on Elijah Chapman again. He's been a standout performer. Let's get into the chat. We haven't really interacted with the chat in a minute. We were off the beaten path here, having some good conversations, but we do have Cameron Johnson asking a pretty interesting question. What about Juice Wells? Could he be the next Victor Cruz? Well, I'll say this. First and foremost, there will never be another Victor Cruz. What happened when the Giants landed Victor Cruz as a UDFA and he went on to be the best slot receiver in the NFL in 2011, I think. That's not going to happen again. Like every year we talk about these undrafted receivers that the Giants pick up. A couple of years ago, it was Bryce Ford Wheaton. It was somebody new last year. It was somebody 3 years ago. Every year there's a wide. Corey Washington was a player many years ago. Every year we're looking for the next Victor Cruz. We got to understand it's just probably not going to happen. Could Juice Wells make this roster and compete? Possibly, but I don't anticipate him being, somebody that has elite potential like Victor Cruz personally. I like Juice Wells, but there's a reason he went undrafted. And he has a very limited game. He's decent after the catch, but not an overall productive player as well during his collegiate career either. So we'll see what we have with Juice Wells. I'm excited to see how he performs in the preseason. If he has a 3-touchdown game against the Jets with 2 one-handed catches, then sure, maybe he'll be the next Victor Cruz. But man, now getting even further off the beaten path, Alex, I have such a vivid memory of that preseason game. Most preseason games are so forgettable. I will never forget watching that breakout Victor Cruz game and being like, this kid is going to be something special. Then he tears his ACL. Then the next year he comes back and he's an absolute superstar. That was one of the best preseason performances, I think, in NFL history. It put Victor Cruz on the map and made him so good in the eyes of the Giants that even after he tore his ACL, they had to get him back on the field, had to retain him and get him going the following season. And he was integral to that Super Bowl run. I love Victor Cruz, one of my favorite Giants of all time. But I'll turn it back to you, Alex. Juice Wells, how do you feel about him? What's your interest in him? Is he the next Victor Cruz?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Juice Wells, any UDFA they're fun to watch. It's spring stuff, practice squad stuff, punt team return stuff. Like Smith Marsette's going to be the kick returner. Who, finally, by the way, we have a kick returner, which is kind of nice. And Greg Turtleholler, I may not be here all the time on the podcast, but I'm always prowling on social media and writing articles about this team. So I do know my stuff, even if I'm not on the podcast. I'm always ready to fire off takes. But you know what? It's kind of been a minute since we've had a UDFA pan out, right? I can't even recall the last one that was productive for this team. Maybe I don't even know. I can't even.
Chapman was productive last year, right?
I guess Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito is a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
He started and won 3 games for the Giants in 2023 as a UDFA rookie. I mean, and like I said, Chapman, he played a good amount last year. Not
right.
He's not like a superstar, but he's a decent contributor.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder. I guess it's so difficult to find actual star UDFAs. It's just impossible. They're just so far behind the 8 ball a lot of times. But I don't know. When it comes to Juice Wells, I don't know enough about him to give a substantiated take about what I think his projection is.
So you might know more about him than you think. If you remember when we were watching Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette film in 2020
yes.
for the 2024 draft, remember we watched a lot of that film, and there was another receiver who kept just catching the ball and creating a bunch of yards after the catch, this physical specimen. That was Juice Wells. He played at South Carolina. He transferred to Ole Miss. So he played there.
Yes,
so you probably
did he have a drop issue?
I think he did have a drop issue.
Okay, so another guy with no hands. Can we just draft guys that catch the damn ball? Anyway, you can learn how to catch the ball better. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But I think he did have some. I remember writing something about him a month ago. Maybe he was really good after the catch. Was that it?
Juice Wells is really good after the catch. That's his whole his whole game is get the ball and run.
Get ball, run. Yes, got it. Okay, so we love that. As long as he can catch it, he can do stuff after the catch. Okay, I mean, yeah, that's something that you need, and stash him on the practice squad. That's where he's going to probably end up. But I do think the Giants have some interesting depth pieces now, and Anthony, how many times over the past couple of years have we begged this team, or not even begged, just been this team has zero depth. One guy goes down, the entire team is in shambles. Andrew Thomas goes down, the whole team is in shambles. One guy, is the entire cascading effect of this franchise. Of course, a left tackle can do that to you, and a quarterback can do that to you. But when your WR1 goes down, you don't have anyone else to step up. We've seen teams survive those things. It's even your safety goes down. You have nobody there, or just a lack of development. I'm happy that this team finally has some depth, because even in the secondary, dude, Dane Belton as a depth piece is solid. right? Cordell Flott as a depth piece is solid.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
That's what that was the main point I really want to make earlier with that 2022 draft class. Like they're all good depth pieces now. Everybody. I mean, Bellinger's a good depth piece. Belton, Flott, McFadden's a starter. Wandale is a starter. They're all good depth pieces or starters at this point, which is a really great positive. And again, it just highlights the importance of drafting well. You have to hit on mid-round draft picks. And I'm not saying you need Marcus Bowe to develop into a starter, but Marcus Bowe needs to be a good depth piece. You know what I mean? That's really the main point of these mid-round draft picks, is to flesh out the depth on your roster. And that's something I think the Giants have gotten a lot better at under Joe Schoen. Like I will give him praise, because no, his draft classes have not been phenomenal. We have not seen guys like Cordell Flott immediately become starting cornerbacks or anything like that. You know, it's not like he's Howie Roseman out here who's drafting starters in round 3 every year. That's unrealistic anyway. But has he developed a roster that actually has some depth by way of his mid-round draft picks? Seemingly, yes, he has. And I think that's something that we can pull away as a positive, especially when comparing and contrasting him to our prior general manager, the guy, Dave Gettleman, who took Ellerson Smith in the 4th round of the draft, which was always, that is like the one pick, Alex, when I look back on the Dave Gettleman era. Obviously, we could be pissed about the Daniel Jones selection at number 6, and we can be pissed about a lot of things. The one that really set me over the edge was Ellerson fucking Smith in the 4th round of the draft. What was that man thinking? Sorry for my language, but I had to get that off my chest. But yeah, I think we're in agreement here. The Giants' depth is like night and day difference from where it was a couple seasons ago. And, you know, hopefully that allows this roster to stay intact a little bit better this season.
Ellerson Smith being the thing that broke your back is hilarious. I remember like them drafting him and being like, that guy looks really thin to be an edge rusher.
Dude,
like he was like a twig.
He was like a 6'7" noodle.
Yeah, like literally like a freaking noodle. I was like, I don't know if he's gonna do so well in the NFL against offensive tackles.
They drafted him because his main calling card was on special teams blocking field goals. In the 4th round?
Remember Gary Brightwell?
Bro. Gary Brightwell. Oh my God.
I was like, he doesn't have
I don't want to remember Gary Brightwell.
He doesn't have bursts. He's not necessarily that good. Like that looked like a Joe Judge favor. I think he went to like Arizona or something like that. So we've seen those weird draft picks over the years where we're like, that one doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that recently the Giants have been pretty good at avoiding BS like that. Like they've just taken the best players. Man, yeah. He's just taking, like, I'll give him this one bit of credit that like in the first like 2 drafts or so, it felt like he was trying to draft for need at times. But the last 2 drafts, as you do, and Marcus McKethan, like they changed that pretty significantly over the past 2 years from a need-based kind of strategy to a we just need the best freaking players because the whole team blows. Like that really is kind of what changes your perspective when you realize like the whole team is bad, man. Like we need players everywhere. And they just decided to change that and they drafted 20 freaking players. And I'll tell you what, like last year, every single player contributed. Every single one of their draft picks contributed, right? They've spent some money on some free agents. They have made some bigger moves. They have a whole rookie class that like Abdul Carter is going to contribute. You know what I mean? Like Dart may not contribute, but like it is what it is. That was the concept behind that was different. Cam Scadaboo is going to contribute, right? Obviously you have Marcus Bowe, who's like a developmental guy, but like we think that he will contribute at some point. And Darius Alexander is going to probably start, at DT alongside Dexter Lawrence. So like they're drafting guys to make an impact because they're capable of making an impact. They're good enough to make an impact as rookies. In the past, they've drafted guys where like, that guy can't even play now. Like that guy's not even ready to see the field yet. So, and that's a difference. And I think like Cordell Flott was not ready as a 3rd round pick, not even close. I think that like Josh Azidu, not even freaking close. Like at least now our 3rd round pick, Darius Alexander, is going to start immediately. Andrew Phillips started immediately, and those guys are going to play good football for us. So like totally different mentality.
I think rather than highlighting a guy like Darius Alexander, who's going to start immediately, I think it's better to highlight a guy like Marcus Bowe, who isn't going to start immediately, because those guys like
better than Azidu as a 5th round pick.
Probably.
Like
Cordell Flott, you just
said
it though. Yeah, he was a third round pick. He shouldn't have been. But you just said it. Like Cordell Flott should not have been starting games as a rookie. Could you imagine if he had a different career trajectory, if he didn't have to start as a rookie and maybe he started to play some more in year 2? Could he be a completely different player? Would his development looked completely differently? Would he be a starter now at this point? It's possible. Same thing with Azidu. Azidu was thrust into the lineup at left tackle and left guard as a rookie. Like, what are we doing? That guy should not have been on the field in the first season of his career. It totally stunted his growth and development. He even got hurt during his rookie season as a result of being on the field too soon. So I really think that the best way to look at it is in years past, they were drafting for need. And as a result, these players were playing as rookies. Rookies are not really meant to play as rookies. Rookies are meant to sit, learn, grow, and develop and eventually make their way into the lineup. Not everybody's supposed to step in from day one like Abdul Carter and go for 10 sacks, right? You don't expect that from your players. But the Giants have been asking that of their players, but they aren't doing that anymore, and I think that's crucial. Even last season when they drafted Tyrone Tracy Jr., they didn't expect him to be the starter. They spent money on Devin Singletary. He just ended up being so good that after 5 weeks, he took over the starting job. But that's a big difference from drafting a rookie 5th-round running back and asking him to start from day one. So I think that there's several examples of this. And that's why I think there's plenty to praise Joe Shane for and say over the last couple of years, he has turned a new leaf and he has learned from those mistakes. We do oftentimes criticize this regime, and they have earned the criticism, 3-14 record last season. But we also do need to remind ourselves every now and then, Alex, they are rookies themselves. This is the first crack at a GM job that Joe Shane has ever had. This is the first crack at a head coaching job that Brian Daboll has ever had. Have we seen some growing pains? Absolutely. Have they been tremendous? Sure have. Have they been painful for us as equally painful as the growing pains have been for them? Probably more painful for us. But we do have to keep in mind, these are growing pains. And so I do think they are kind of turning a corner and becoming a pretty competent regime at this point in year 4. So hopefully that comes to fruition and that beholds true, but we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. But Alex, as we wrap up here in the final few minutes of this live stream, what have you missed out on, since you've taken your miniature hiatus from the channel? What topics have you been dying to ask me about or debate with me or argue with me about or just get off your chest here?
I mean, it's been slow since the draft, obviously. Not much going on. I've been kind of waiting, kind of like looking around, seeing if there's anything. There's one question that I have, though, and I think that it kind of the entire season leans on it. Do you have faith in the offensive line to be good this year? Because I feel like one injury and they're back to being horrible again. Like that's my concern at this point. Like they just don't have enough starting talent and they don't have enough depth, good depth. You know what I mean? Like Andrew Thomas, he is injury prone now. Like he has earned that label. Jermaine Illuminor, love that guy. But he can't play both tackle spots if AT goes down. Runyon, lot to prove. JMS is bad until proven otherwise. And Greg Van Roten is our starting right guard, and he is a very, very, very slightly average player. So I am concerned about this offensive line once again. And I think Carmen Bracilla will get a better unit with a year under their belt, but they also didn't have much chemistry together because they were constantly shifting and shuffling again. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends who gets injured, right? Like you said, they're one injury away from catastrophe. If that injury is Andrew Thomas, yeah, it's catastrophic. The entire season, in my opinion, Alex, and not to be dramatic or hyperbolic, the Giants' record this season hinges on one player to me, and that player is Andrew Thomas. If Andrew Thomas doesn't play 15 games this season, I don't think the Giants are going to be a winning football team or even close to it. But if he plays the entire season and is fully healthy, I think they can win 7 games. I think they can push for a playoff spot. I think that he is easily the most valuable, most important player on the New York Giants roster. And so you ask me about the success of this offensive line, the potential of this offensive line. I don't know. It just all depends on Andrew Thomas. Last year when Andrew Thomas was in the lineup, the whole offensive line was pretty good. They were good in pass protection. They had some good performances. Then he went down with an injury and it all fell apart. So it's really just going to be up to Andrew Thomas and his ability to stay healthy. That's really the only answer I can give you. If he's healthy, sure, maybe they're competent. If he's injured, I think the whole season just unravels for the Giants. Let's do this, Alex. It's been a minute. The overreaction segment. let's see if we can come up with some. Feel free to fire some back at me. Or how about this? You know me, I'm a big Rich Eisen show fan. They also do a "What's More Likely" segment. I'm gonna throw this one out there for you. What's more likely, that Jackson Dart starts 6 games, or that Jameis Winston starts 2 games this season?
All right. So you said Jameis Winston starts 2 games and
Dart starts 6. What's more likely?
it's a good one. I think Dart starting 6 is more likely than Jameis starting 2. So I think they're just going to skip right over Jameis Winston. If that happens, okay. So like, if Jameis Winston plays, it's because Russell Wilson got hurt, right? But if Jackson Dart plays, it's because the Giants blow and they just want to turn the page. So it's like there's two different, like, they're not going to rush Dart to start if he's not ready. But if it's like week 12 and they're like a 4-win team, I could see them turning the page then. You know what I mean? So I think Dart starting 6 probably is more likely, but maybe that's a hot take.
I don't think so. I think it really could go either way. Let's go overreaction. Let's think. Overreaction or not an overreaction, Darius Slayton is finally going to crack 900 receiving yards this season.
I think there's a good chance that happens.
Not an overreaction. What about 1,000? Is 1,000 yards an overreaction?
It's teetering on it. I think probably an overreaction just because like he's never gotten like, I mean, he's gotten relatively close. I think it was like 850 one year, but like 1,000 is a lot for an offense that like really hasn't proven much yet. So I'm going to say that's an overreaction because I just don't trust the offensive line either yet, as I mentioned before.
Fair enough. Overreaction or not, the Giants defense will rank number 1 in sacks this season.
Probably an overreaction. Again, I think they have so much talent, but I got to see it to believe it. I think they could be top 5 though. Like I think top 5 is realistic, but 1 is, that would be sick. That'd be awesome. I think they do have the potential though to do that in the next like 2 or 3 years. I think that they do have that upside.
For sure. Feel free to fire any back at me. I'm trying to think more.
Do you think that Wan'Dale Robinson will average more than 7.5 yards per reception this year?
That's a good line. 7.5. Yeah, no, he will. He will.
He has to. He has to. Do you think that Graham Gano is going to freaking actually live up to his contract?
No, I actually think he's going to get cut this summer.
He's making too much money. I have a good one. Do you think that Theo Johnson is going to have a breakout year?
Yes, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a breakout as fans expect. I think a breakout year for him is going to look like 500 yards, and we're going to be really happy about that.
Dude, I would love that. Oh my God. 500 yards and like 5 touchdowns would be over the moon.
Yeah, I think fans, when they hear the term breakout, they think, oh, could we have 1,000-yard receiving tight end? Could we get 10 touchdowns? No. 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, that would be realistic, and I could see that happening.
I'd be so happy with that for a sophomore tight end who just barely flashed anything last year before the foot injury. So
dude, like the Giants are like obsessed with that guy too. They like love Theo Johnson. Joe Shane, anytime he does a presser, he has to mention how much he loves Theo Johnson. So they're really trying to position him for that breakout.
He's tough, man. He freaking ran some guys over last year. Like he can break tackles. Like he could be sick if he stays healthy and they get him involved. And I think Russ will get him more involved. Like he could actually be a really good player. I don't think that's crazy. They like him for a reason. Like he was coming from Penn State. I think he had like one of the best 40-yard dash times of like any tight end in that draft class. Like he's some of the best athletic scores at like in that draft class for any tight end. Like he has a lot of potential and tough as nails. Decent enough blocker. Like, and I hope he gets better. I'm bullish on him this season.
Yeah, me too. I think he's going to have a good year. The last thing that I'll throw out there before we do wrap this up, this is just to circle back to the topic earlier of Jalin Hyatt. And his position. So last season, he was on the field for 344 total snaps. 300 of those were out wide. 37 of those were in the slot. Let's look at his collegiate season when he won the Fred Biletnikoff Award. He had 624 snaps in the slot, 92 out wide. Call me crazy. I think I cracked the code here. Jalin Hyatt has just not been playing in the right position. I think he is a slot receiver. I get why people maybe, feel like he's not a slot because, well, Wan'Dale is a very different kind of slot receiver. But to me, Hyatt is a slot receiver that the Giants have been trying to force to become an outside receiver, and that's why he struggled. They got to play him in the slot this season, in my opinion, and I think that's the best path for him to become a legit player in this lineup as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them use him in the slot, and you could do, like I said earlier, you could do some really fun stuff with Hyatt in the slot, Neighbors, and Slayton out wide. Like, you could get really creative with how you attack defenses, especially defenses that have weak safeties, right? If you have a defense, you have weak safety help, you could use Hyatt as a burner. Like, slot corners are not meant for speed like that. They're meant to be more agile, smaller, quicker, but they're not meant to be able to handle speed like that. So, like, I think that Hyatt could be pretty dangerous if you had him against, a slot corner and with poor safeties. I don't know. That could be that'll be a fun one to see if the Giants get a little bit more active in that way. But again, it really depends on the offensive line, because like usually you need to wait a little bit for your slot receiver to get open. So I do think that, offensive line holds up, this entire offense is going to be a night and day. Like, we're going to see a playbook that we didn't even know existed. That's how bad it's been. I do think that Brian Dable's playbook, like, we saw a 2-page regimen from him last year. Like, that was it. Like, he had to tear out half the book, most of the book, because they could not run the plays with the personnel we had.
Yeah. I also think the last point that I'll make on Hyatt going to the slot before we do wrap this up, I think the need for him to be a sharp route runner in order to play in the slot is a little bit overblown. He doesn't need to be like Wan'Dale Robinson, where he runs these really compact and short routes and like these zigs and whips and stuff like that. All Hyatt needs to do, drag across the field, which is literally just run in a straight line, deep crosser down the field, which is run in a slanted line, or slot fades. Just give him those 3 routes, and I guarantee you he doubles his production from his rookie season and scores 5 touchdowns this year. If you play Jalin Hyatt from the slot and he runs just those 3 routes the entire season, I guarantee you he goes for at least 500 yards. That easy. So that's my take on Jalin Hyatt. I think it's so easy, and the Giants are just overcomplicating it, overthinking it. Stop playing him out wide. Just play him in the slot and let him run straight. That's my take. So, but that pretty much is going to wrap this one up. This was a really fun live stream. We had some good laughs along the way and some good segments in there. Appreciate everybody who did tune in on YouTube, on X. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Alex, for rejoining me here on the channel. It was great to talk some ball with you, my good friend. But without further ado, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to our shows on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.